Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Anne Bancroft was an American actress of remarkable range and depth, best known for her commanding screen presence and emotionally complex portrayals. Born Anna Maria Louisa Italiano on September 17, 1931, in the Bronx, New York, she studied acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and later under the legendary Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, where she honed her craft in the method tradition. Bancroft began her career in the early 1950s with roles in television and minor film parts under her birth name. Her breakout came on Broadway in 1958 with Two for the Seesaw, which won her a Tony Award. She followed that with another powerful stage performance as Helen Keller's teacher, Annie Sullivan, in The Miracle Worker, 1959, a role she reprised in the 1962 film version, earning her the Academy Award for Best Actress. She was perhaps most famously known for playing the seductive and enigmatic Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate, 1967, a role that became iconic and emblematic of a cultural shift in American cinema. Though Bancroft was only 6 years older than Dustin Hoffman, her performance captured the disillusionment and complexity of middle-aged womanhood with a mix of power, vulnerability, and tragic humor. Over a career that spanned more than 5 decades, Bancroft remained a versatile performer in both film and television, appearing in dramas, comedies, and independent projects. Her other notable films include The Pumpkin Eater, 1964, The Turning Point, 1977, Agnes of God, 1985, and 84 Charing Cross Road, 1987. Many of which brought her critical acclaim and award nominations. She was married to comedian and filmmaker Mel Brooks from 1964 until her death, and the two shared a famously devoted relationship. Bancroft supported Brooks's work and even collaborated with him occasionally, but she maintained her own artistic identity, often choosing challenging and unconventional roles. Anne Bancroft passed away on June 6, 2005, from uterine cancer. She left behind a legacy as one of the most gifted actresses of her generation, a performer who brought intelligence, grace, and emotional intensity to every role. Anne Bancroft's legacy as a performer is defined not just by the breadth of her work, but by the depth of her emotional honesty on screen and stage. She was a master at revealing the inner lives of complicated women, characters marked by longing, regret, strength, and resilience. Early career and reinvention. Bancroft began her Hollywood career in the early 1950s under contract with 20th Century Fox, where she appeared in a series of B-movies and genre films, often billed as Anne Marno. Frustrated with the lack of meaningful roles, she returned to New York in the late 1950s to study acting more seriously and build her reputation on stage. That decision transformed her career. Her Broadway success in Two for the Seesaw, opposite Henry Fonda, and The Miracle Worker quickly made her a sought-after dramatic actress. Bancroft's performance as Annie Sullivan was a tour de force, tough, passionate, and deeply moving, and it solidified her reputation as one of the best of her generation. Winning both the Tony Award and later the Oscar for the same role was a rare feat. Film highlights. Bancroft was nominated for a total of 5 Academy Awards, win The Miracle Worker, 1962, Best Actress nominations. The Pumpkin Eater, 1964, a raw portrayal of a woman's unraveling psyche. The Graduate, 1967, her most iconic role. The Turning Point, 1977, as a former ballerina facing past regrets. Agnes of God, 1985, as a psychiatrist investigating a divine mystery. Her role in The Graduate remains one of the most memorable in American film history. Despite the cultural impact of Mrs. Robinson as a symbol of predatory older women, Bancroft played the character with subtlety, revealing a woman trapped in a loveless marriage and disconnected from her own sense of purpose. She later expressed discomfort with how the role had been reduced in popular imagination to mere seduction, rather than the full human complexity she brought to it. Later work and directing. In the later stages of her career, Bancroft continued to work in film and television, often playing strong maternal or intellectual roles. She appeared in '84 Charing Cross Road, 1987, a poignant two-person drama based on real correspondence, alongside Anthony Hopkins. Her role in To Be or Not to Be, 1983, a remake directed by Mel Brooks, showcased her comedic timing. She also took a turn behind the camera in 2000, writing and directing the film Fatso, a comedy drama that explored body image, self-worth, and relationships. It reflected her interest in human vulnerability and social expectations, themes that ran throughout her career. Personal life and philosophy. Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks had one of Hollywood's most enduring and affectionate marriages. Despite their contrasting public personas, Brooks being loud and comedic, Bancroft private and serious, they were deeply supportive of each other. Bancroft once said that when she met Brooks, she felt like someone had handed her the moon. She was known for being deeply private and avoided the spotlight outside of her work. She believed in the power of acting not as celebrity, but as empathy, a craft to be refined, respected, and taken seriously. Bancroft never relied on glamour or superficiality. Instead, she consistently brought intelligence, depth, and grace to her characters. Legacy. Anne Bancroft's influence continues to be felt in both film and theater. Actresses like Meryl Streep, Julianne Moore, and Cate Blanchett have cited her work as inspirational. Bancroft's ability to move seamlessly between mediums and between comedy and tragedy speaks to a rare talent. She was posthumously honored with tributes by the Academy and her peers, and her performances remain touchstones for actors studying the art of emotional realism. Anne Bancroft wasn't just an actress, she was a force of nature on stage and screen. Her performances remain indelible not because of spectacle, but because of their honesty and humanity. Anne Bancroft's extraordinary life and career were marked by a deep commitment to truth in performance, an elegant resistance to Hollywood's superficiality, and a fierce independence that set her apart from her peers. A master of character depth. What made Bancroft exceptional wasn't just her talent, it was her insight. She had a rare ability to express internal conflict with the subtlest facial gesture or the slightest shift in tone. Whether playing saints, sinners, or something in between, she refused to oversimplify her characters. In The Pumpkin Eater, 1964, she gave one of her most emotionally raw performances as Jo Armitage, a woman grappling with infidelity and the existential weight of motherhood. Her performance won her Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival and a BAFTA award. The role was a stark contrast to the glamorous, polished female roles common in that era. Bancroft brought grit and emotional nakedness to the screen. In The Turning Point, 1977, she played opposite Shirley MacLaine in a powerful examination of choices, regret, and aging. As Emma, a celebrated ballerina who gave her life to her career at the cost of a family, Bancroft was vulnerable, prideful, and broken, a testament to her ability to embody women torn between identity and sacrifice. Resisting the Hollywood mold. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Bancroft never tried to conform to Hollywood's expectations. She didn't chase glamour roles and openly disliked the celebrity culture that surrounded the business. Bancroft's choices were based on substance, not image, and she turned down roles that didn't challenge her. Despite the fame that The Graduate brought her, She remained deeply serious about her craft. She often rejected roles she felt were too shallow or didn't allow for character exploration. Bancroft cared more about playing interesting, conflicted women than about being liked or admired. Even at the peak of her fame, she continued to seek out theater roles, where she felt the acting was purer and more artistically satisfying. Her Broadway work included Mother Courage and Her Children, 1963, A Cry of Players, 1968, and Golda, 1977, where she played Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, showcasing her fierce political intelligence. Marriage to Mel Brooks. Bancroft's personal life was surprisingly low-key, especially given her marriage to one of comedy's most flamboyant figures, Mel Brooks. They met in 1961 while working on a television special and were married 3 years later. Despite their differing on-screen styles, they were one of Hollywood's most stable and loving couples. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and admiration. Brooks often said Bancroft was his muse and most trusted critic. While they collaborated occasionally, she was never overshadowed by his fame. They had one son, Max Brooks, who would go on to become a writer known for World War Z's final years and legacy. In her later years, Bancroft took on more selective roles. She portrayed strong matriarchs and intellectual women in films like G.I. Jane, 1997, Great Expectations, 1998, and Up at the Villa, 2000. Her final screen appearance was in the HBO film The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, 2003, based on Tennessee Williams's novella, Another Portrait of a Complex aging woman seeking identity in unfamiliar emotional terrain. Anne Bancroft died of uterine cancer on June 6, 2005, at the age of 73. Her death was met with widespread tributes from the entertainment world. Meryl Streep called her a benchmark for actors. Mike Nichols, who directed her in The Graduate, said she was one of the most brilliant and beautiful actresses of our time. Cultural and artistic influence. Bancroft opened doors for actresses who sought to break away from typecasting. Her legacy is especially important for women in film who aim to tell stories not just of beauty or romance, but of struggle, interior life, and resilience. Though she's often remembered for The Graduate, her career was far more nuanced than a single role. She represented a generation of actresses who weren't content to play decorative parts. She embodied the intelligence, vulnerability, and strength of real women. Her influence lives on in the work of actresses who favor depth over celebrity and character over convention. In an era increasingly obsessed with image, Anne Bancroft remains a beacon of what acting can be: honest, powerful, and deeply human. Anne Bancroft's artistic journey was fueled by discipline, inner fire, and an insistence on emotional truth. Though Hollywood tried at times to place her in tidy boxes, the sultry older woman, the fierce mother, the troubled intellectual, she always broke free, using her performances to explore the full, messy complexity of the human spirit. Roots and identity. Born to Italian immigrant parents, Bancroft was raised in a working-class Roman Catholic household in the Bronx. Her birth name, Anna Maria Louisa Italiano, reflected her heritage, something she never abandoned in spirit, even after changing her stage name to the more marketable Anne Bancroft in the early 1950s. She later spoke candidly about the pressure to downplay her ethnicity to succeed in Hollywood. But rather than conforming entirely, Bancroft used her identity to bring groundedness and grit to her performances. Her cultural background helped shape her sensitivity to themes of family, shame, struggle, and pride, all frequent elements in her most powerful roles. Commitment to the craft. Bancroft was, at her core, an actor's actor, devoted to the process. Her training at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and later under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio gave her the tools to dive deep into character psychology. She believed that acting was about revealing the hidden parts of a person, not performing in the superficial sense. "I am not a performer," she once said. "I am a reactor, a truth-teller. I live inside the moment. I don't decorate it." This attitude made her a perfect fit for the 1960s and 70s, when American cinema was shifting away from studio gloss into a more intimate, character-driven realism. Bancroft thrived in this atmosphere. Whether in period dramas or modern domestic stories, she brought a razor-sharp intelligence to her roles, always inviting the audience to feel, not just watch. Mentorship and influence. Later in life, Bancroft mentored young actors and remained an advocate for thoughtful storytelling, particularly when it came to female characters. She lamented the industry's tendency to limit older actresses, often turning down roles that reduced women to clichés. Instead, she looked for scripts that offered emotional challenge or psychological insight. Many in the industry viewed her as a trailblazer, someone who refused to let Hollywood define her based on age or appearance. Her influence extended to women like Glenn Close, Jessica Lange, and Frances McDormand, all of whom embraced roles with similar courage and honesty, humor and humanity. Despite her intense dramatic reputation, Bancroft had a sharp sense of humor. Friends and collaborators described her as deeply witty, warm, and even mischievous. Her comedic instincts were clear in projects like To Be or Not to Be, 1983, where she shared the screen with Mel Brooks in a satire about World War II-era performers fighting Nazis. In their marriage, it was said she was the quieter of the two, but no less funny. She once remarked, "When Mel told me he was going to make The Producers, I laughed. When he told me he was going to marry me, I panicked." Their partnership was one of mutual admiration and love, rarely seen in show business with such longevity. Unfinished projects and quiet departure. In the early 2000s, Bancroft continued to work, though her appearances became less frequent. She was reportedly working on several film and stage projects before her illness. Her death in 2005 was a shock to many, as she had kept her cancer diagnosis private. In death, as in life, she didn't seek fanfare. There was no funeral, no public memorial, a decision that reflected her lifelong preference for privacy and humility. She left behind a body of work that remains deeply influential, rich in subtlety, and emotionally fearless. The enduring power of her legacy today. Anne Bancroft is remembered not just for what she did, but for how she did it. She showed that power in acting doesn't come from volume or flash, but from restraint, empathy, and emotional intelligence. She challenged the norms of femininity in film, offered nuanced portrayals of aging, and refused to let the industry dictate her path. She remains an enduring symbol of artistic integrity, someone who followed her instincts and never compromised her vision. In every performance, she brought audiences face to face with life's complexity, its ache, its humor, its longing, and did so with unmatched grace. As Mel Brooks once said, "She was the love of my life and the soul of everything I ever wrote." Anne Bancroft's life and work occupy a singular place in American entertainment history, a bridge between the golden age of Hollywood and the more emotionally complex, psychologically raw storytelling that emerged in the 1960s and beyond. Her presence was commanding, but it was her depth, that quiet, penetrating emotional intelligence, that made her unforgettable. The woman behind the roles off-screen, Bancroft was known for her introspective nature, fierce intellect, and wry humor. She wasn't interested in being a celebrity, in fact. She often avoided publicity and kept a very low profile in her private life. She once said, "I hate the whole cult of the movie star. I don't think when people see me on the screen they should think of me as Anne Bancroft. They should think of the people I'm playing." This desire to disappear into her roles is what made her performances feel so emotionally real. Bancroft didn't want to be idolized, she wanted to be believed. Her colleagues often spoke about her intensity on set, her deep preparation, and her ability to inhabit a character so fully that it became difficult to distinguish where the woman ended and the performance began. She didn't just act, she transformed. Reclaiming aging and womanhood on screen, Anne Bancroft was also one of the few actresses of her generation who managed to continue receiving significant and meaty roles well into middle age. In a business that often discarded women past a certain age, Bancroft remained vital by choosing parts that showcased the complex reality of aging. Her portrayal of women confronting the passage of time, in The Turning Point, 84 Charing Cross Road, and Agnes of God, brought depth and dignity to stories that Hollywood had traditionally ignored or simplified. She gave voice to older women who still had desires, regrets, ambitions, and inner conflicts. And she did it without sentimentality. Her characters could be sharp-tongued, bitter, even broken, but they were never reduced to stereotypes. A life of selective brilliance. Unlike many stars who worked constantly, Bancroft was highly selective. Over her 50-year career, she appeared in fewer than 50 films, not because she couldn't work more, but because she only said yes to roles that spoke to her. She was known to turn down lucrative offers if the material didn't move her or challenge her. This selectiveness gave her filmography a rare level of consistency and quality. Even when the films themselves weren't always perfect, her performances were always among their strongest elements. She also occasionally stepped into television, including a highly praised performance in the made-for-TV movie Deep in My Heart, 1999, for which she won a Screen Actors Guild Award. She didn't consider television a lesser medium, as some of her peers did. To Bancroft, the quality of the writing and the truth of the performance mattered more than the format. Legacy as a woman in the arts. Anne Bancroft's influence extends far beyond the screen. She helped pave the way for a new kind of female-led in American cinema, women who were flawed, intelligent, complicated, sexual, and, most importantly, fully human. She is often cited by modern actresses as an example of courage and integrity in the face of industry pressures. Her determination to take roles that mattered, and reject those that didn't, remains a model for how to build a career based on principle, not popularity. The film industry today still struggles with many of the issues Bancroft pushed back against: typecasting, ageism, and the underrepresentation of emotionally rich female narratives. But her legacy is a blueprint for change, proof that serious, challenging roles for women can have both artistic and cultural impact. Final thoughts. Anne Bancroft was not a showy star. She was not obsessed with beauty or image or power in the conventional sense. She was an artist, relentless in her pursuit of authenticity, deliberate in her choices, and fearless in her performances. She gave us unforgettable characters: Annie Sullivan, Mrs. Robinson, Joe Armitage, Emma Jacqueline, each one a study in contradiction, pain, and quiet strength. But perhaps her most powerful role was the one she played behind the scenes, that of a woman who insisted on being seen and heard not for how she looked, but for what she had to say. Anne Bancroft's artistry, integrity, and human insight remain timeless. Her work continues to resonate, not as a relic of the past, but as a reminder of how profound acting can be when it comes from a place of truth. Anne Bancroft's life and artistry were fueled by a fierce sense of purpose. She was not interested in being a conventional leading lady. She wanted to explore truth, contradiction, and the full weight of human experience. Her performances weren't just emotionally powerful, they were lived in, layered with regret, love, bitterness, humor, and grace. A performer of unspoken emotion, what set Bancroft apart from her peers, even among the greats, was her extraordinary ability to express what wasn't said. She was a master of silence and restraint, often revealing more in a single glance or pause than other actors could in pages of dialogue. In 84 Charing Cross Road, 1987, her performance as Helena Hamph, a New York writer who builds a decades-long friendship with a British bookseller through letters, is gentle, wistful, and quietly devastating. Bancroft plays the part with nuance and dry wit, and the power of her performance lies in the emotions she leaves just beneath the surface: yearning, loneliness, unspoken love. Her ability to underplay, to trust the audience, was one of her trademarks. She didn't overact, she inhabited. She listened on screen, allowing the characters around her to affect her deeply, and drawing viewers into the private world of her characters. Champion of complex female roles throughout her career, Anne Bancroft fought against the tendency of Hollywood to limit women, especially older women, to simplistic roles. She openly criticized the industry's obsession with youth and appearance, once remarking, "I do not want to be a woman in peril, nor the long-suffering wife. If a character is worth playing, it has to be real, not ornamental." This attitude influenced the next generation of women in film, particularly actresses who sought to maintain control over their careers and resist typecasting. Her refusal to accept diminished roles after 40 was revolutionary for its time. Rather than fading into the background, she turned her focus to characters with inner worlds: teachers, mothers, artists, ex-dancers, skeptics, people with full, difficult lives. Mel Brooks. A love that defied stereotypes. One of the most fascinating aspects of Bancroft's life was her relationship with Mel Brooks, her husband of over 40 years. While they may have seemed like opposites on the surface, she was refined, subtle, dramatic. He was brash, outrageous, comedic. They were deeply connected by a shared love of art, intellect, and laughter. They were famously inseparable. Bancroft often sat quietly at the back of the theater during Brooks's premieres or edits, serving as his emotional anchor and creative conscience. He, in turn, was her biggest fan. He later said that the secret to their long marriage was simple: we fell in love and we stayed in love. Their son, Max Brooks, would go on to become a best-selling author and screenwriter in his own right, proving the creative legacy continued in the family. Beyond the screen, a woman of conviction, Anne Bancroft was also quietly political. She wasn't a loud activist, but she was passionate about civil rights, women's equality, and arts education. She believed deeply in the importance of artistic freedom and creative integrity, often supporting young actors and independent filmmakers without fanfare. She was known to write handwritten notes to emerging actresses whose performances moved her, a rare and generous gesture in an industry driven by competition. She saw herself as part of a larger artistic tradition, and she took that responsibility seriously. A quiet exit, a loud legacy when Anne Bancroft passed away in 2005. The film world lost one of its brightest, most dignified voices. True to form, she kept her illness private, and there was no public funeral. She had lived her life away from the spotlight, and she chose to leave it the same way. But her influence has only grown in the years since her death. Actors revisit her performances in The Miracle Worker, The Pumpkin Eater, Agnes of God.